Today, I want to talk about my personal philosophy, Gothic Luciferian Gnosticism, and I already know what some people are going to think the moment they hear the word Luciferianism. They are going to think, oh, here we go. Devil worship, Satanism, evil, darkness, anti-Christian rebellion. But that is not what this is. Gothic Luciferian Gnosticism is not devil worship. It is not the celebration of evil. It is not rebellion for its own sake. And it is not some childish reversal of Christianity where God is thrown off the throne just so Lucifer can be placed there instead. That would still be a reaction. That would still be dependency. That would still mean the old system controls the conversation, because everything would still be defined by opposition to it. Gothic Luciferian Gnosticism begins in a very different place. In this philosophy, Lucifer is not the devil. Lucifer is not a monster. Lucifer is not the whole of the divine. Lucifer is a symbol of the awakened mind. Lucifer represents clarity, questioning, discernment, illumination, intellectual courage, and rebellion against false authority. Not rebellion against goodness. Not rebellion against love. Not rebellion against truth. Rebellion against fear, manipulation, spiritual control, and blind obedience. Lucifer is the part of the human being that asks, why? Why should I believe this? Why should I obey this? Why should I fear this? Who benefits from my silence? Who taught me to be ashamed of my own mind? That is Lucifer's mind. But in Gothic Luciferian Gnosticism, Lucifer does not stand alone. That is one of the most important differences between this system and many forms of traditional Luciferianism. In my system, Lucifer is one part of a larger inner trinity. Lucifer is mind. Sophia is soul. Jesus is heart. Lucifer is clarity, rebellion, and discernment. Sophia is wisdom, depth, and acceptance. Jesus is compassion, love, and mercy. Together, they form what I call the threefold being. This is not three separate gods fighting for control of the self. It is one integrated being expressed through three archetypal powers. These powers exist inside the human being as three necessary forces of balance and healing. Lucifer teaches the mind to see. Sophia teaches the soul to understand. Jesus teaches the heart to love. And together, they heal. That is the center of Gothic Luciferian Gnosticism. The mind alone is not enough. The soul alone is not enough. The heart alone is not enough. Each one is sacred, but each can become distorted if cut off from the others. Lucifer without Sophia and Jesus can become cold. The mind can become sharp, but cruel. It can expose lies, but not heal wounds. It can rebel against false authority, but become arrogant. It can cut through illusion, but forget tenderness. It can become so proud of seeing clearly that it loses compassion for people who are still trapped. Sophia, without Lucifer and Jesus, can become sorrowful and passive. The soul may understand suffering, but become buried in it. It may accept reality, but confuse acceptance with resignation. It may descend into memory, pain, and depth, but never rise again with wisdom transformed into action. Jesus without Lucifer and Sophia can become blind compassion. The heart may love, but fail to discern. It may forgive, but without boundaries. It may accept cruelty in the name of mercy. It may become so committed to love that it refuses to name evil, manipulation, or abuse. So the threefold being is the balanced being. Lucifer says, wake up, question the lie, see clearly. Sophia says, go deeper, understand the wound, remember what was buried. Jesus says, do not become cruel because you have suffered. That is the healing path. Illumination. Integration. Redemption. Lucifer brings illumination because he exposes illusion. Sophia brings integration by turning suffering into wisdom. Jesus brings redemption by restoring compassion after pain. This is why Gothic Luciferian Gnosticism is not anti-Jesus. That matters. It may be critical of institutional Christianity, church control, religious fear, and dogmatic authority, but it does not reject Jesus as an archetype of compassion. There is a difference between Jesus and the machinery built in his name. There is a difference between the living symbol of love and the institution that uses love as a weapon. There is a difference between the heart and the system that tries to own the heart. In Gothic Luciferian Gnosticism, Jesus is not the police officer of dogma. Jesus is not the symbol of forced obedience. Jesus is the heart. He is compassion, love, mercy, forgiveness, and the refusal to let suffering turn the soul into something cruel. That is essential because rebellion, by itself, can go wrong. A person can escape one prison and build another. A person can reject one tyrant and become a tyrant. A person can expose lies and still become bitter, prideful, and destructive. So Jesus keeps Lucifer accountable to compassion. And Sophia keeps Lucifer connected to depth. Sophia is the soul. She is wisdom, memory, descent, grief, intuition, acceptance, and the recovery of what has been buried. Sophia asks a different question than Lucifer. Lucifer asks, "What lied to me?" Sophia asks, "What part of me was wounded by that lie?" That changes everything. Because the problem is not only the external authority. It is not only the church, the state, society, family, culture, or any institution that tells us what to fear and what to obey. The deeper problem is that these lies can enter the self. They become shame. They become trauma. They become a false identity. They become spiritual amnesia. A person may leave the institution and still carry the wound. A person may reject the dogma and still carry the fear. A person may say, "I am free," while still being ruled by the very thing they think they escaped. That is why Sophia matters. Sophia does not merely give information. Sophia gives wisdom. And wisdom is different from information. Information says, "I know something." Wisdom says, "I understand what it means." Sophia is the power that descends into the hidden rooms of the self. She goes into the locked chamber, the old wound, the forgotten memory, the abandoned part of the soul. She does not go there to worship pain. She goes there to recover what was lost. That is where the Gothic enters the system. The Gothic is not just black clothing, candles, old castles, graveyards, vampires, roses, ruined cathedrals, and beautiful darkness. Those things are part of the aesthetic, yes, but they are not the whole meaning. The Gothic is a spiritual psychology. The Gothic understands that the human being is often haunted. The self is not always a bright, clean temple. Sometimes the self is a ruined cathedral. Sometimes it is a locked room. Sometimes it is a monster created by abandonment. Sometimes it is a memory buried beneath years of shame. Sometimes it is a beautiful ruin that still contains sacred architecture. That is why Gothic symbolism matters. The monster is not always the enemy. Sometimes the monster is the wounded self returning in a terrifying form because it was never allowed to speak. The haunted house is not just a scary place. Sometimes the haunted house is the mind. The locked room is not just a mystery. Sometimes the locked room is the part of the soul we were told to hide. The vampire is not just a supernatural creature. Sometimes the vampire is hunger, longing, desire, loneliness, seduction, forbidden intimacy, or the need to be seen. The Gothic gives us a language for the parts of human experience that polite society wants to bury: grief, longing, trauma, death, desire, exile, beauty, shadow, and transformation. That is why my system is Gothic. It does not treat darkness as evil. But it also does not worship darkness for its own sake. It asks what the darkness contains. Some darkness hides danger. Some darkness hides pain. Some darkness hides truth. Some darkness hides the parts of ourselves that could not survive in daylight because daylight belonged to people who judged, shamed, controlled, or misunderstood us. So Gothic Luciferian Gnosticism does not simply say, "Rise." It says, "Descend first. Go into the darkness. Recover what was lost. then rise with the flame. That is different from traditional Luciferianism. Traditional Luciferianism often centers Lucifer as the liberator, the rebel, the light-bringer, the figure of forbidden knowledge, self-sovereignty, and refusal to kneel. And there is power in that. There is truth in that. There is a necessary fire in that. Because sometimes people need to say no. No to fear. No to shame. No to spiritual intimidation. No to institutions that demand obedience without truth. No to people who call submission a virtue because they benefit from your submission. That Luciferian fire matters. Gothic Luciferian Gnosticism preserves it. But it does not stop there. Because rebellion is not healing by itself. A person can rebel and remain broken. A person can reject authority and still be controlled by resentment. A person can mock religion and still be spiritually empty. A person can call themselves enlightened and still be cruel. So, Gothic Luciferian Gnosticism says, rebellion must become integration. Lucifer awakens the mind, but Sophia must restore the soul, and Jesus must heal the heart. That is the difference. Traditional Luciferianism often says, Lucifer liberates. Gothic Luciferian Gnosticism says, Lucifer liberates the mind, Sophia recovers the soul, and Jesus protects the heart from becoming cruel. The goal is not ego worship. The goal is not self-exaltation. The goal is not to say, I am my own God, if that only means pride, indulgence, domination, or contempt for others. The goal is wholeness. The goal is to recover the divine structure within the human being. To think clearly. To feel deeply. To love without blindness. To rebel without cruelty. To accept without surrendering. To forgive without becoming weak. To descend without becoming trapped in darkness. To rise without forgetting what the darkness taught you. That is the threefold being. The healed person needs Lucifer's eyes, Sophia's depth, and Jesus' heart. Lucifer sees the wound. Sophia understands the wound. Jesus heals the wound. And this is why Gothic Luciferian Gnosticism is also Gnostic. Gnosis does not simply mean secret knowledge. It does not mean trivia about hidden doctrines. It does not mean collecting esoteric facts so the ego can feel superior. Gnosis means awakening. It means remembrance. It means seeing through the illusion and recovering what was hidden inside the self. The human being is not only oppressed from the outside. The human being is often obscured from within. We are buried under fear, trauma, shame, inherited beliefs, false identities, and stories we did not choose but learned to mistake for ourselves. Gnosis is the moment when the buried self begins to remember. It is the moment you realize, I am not the wound. I am not the shame. I am not the fear they gave me. I am not the role they assigned to me. I am not the monster they named. That is why this path is about healing trauma. Trauma fragments the being. Lucifer restores clarity. Sophia restores depth. Jesus restores compassion. The mind learns to see again. The soul learns to remember again. The heart learns to love again. Not naively. Not blindly. Not stupidly. But with wisdom. Because real healing does not mean becoming soft in the head. It does not mean pretending evil does not exist. It does not mean allowing people to harm you because you want to be spiritual. Real healing means becoming whole enough to see clearly without becoming bitter, to understand pain without being ruled by it, and to love without surrendering your discernment. That is the balance. When facing deception, Lucifer must rise. When facing suffering, Sophia must speak. When facing hatred, Jesus must answer. But none of them should rule alone. Mind must not dominate heart. Heart must not blind mind. Soul must not drown both in sorrow. The three must speak to each other. That is the inner Trinity. That is the threefold being. So, if someone asks me what Gothic Luciferian Gnosticism is, I would say this: it is a path of awakening, healing, and integration. It uses Lucifer as the symbol of the awakened mind. It uses Sophia as the symbol of the deep soul. It uses Jesus as the symbol of a healed heart. It rejects false authority, but it does not reject compassion. It enters darkness, but it does not worship evil. It honors rebellion, but it does not confuse rebellion with wholeness. It seeks Gnosis, but not as ego. As remembrance. It is Gothic because it descends into the haunted places. It is Luciferian because it refuses spiritual slavery. It is Gnostic because it seeks the hidden truth beneath illusion. And it is healing because the goal is not to become powerful while remaining broken. The goal is to become whole. Lucifer awakens the mind. Sophia deepens the soul. Jesus heals the heart. Lucifer sees. Sophia understands. Jesus loves. Together, they heal. And that is the foundation of Gothic Luciferian Gnosticism.